Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody, from my isolated secret location in North Carolina.
Yeah. So this is I assume was a road trip head down to Louisiana or something, or just
Well, I'm headed to Myrtle Beach to coach basketball. And then when that ends, we're going out to see Lori's mom in Arizona. So big, long trip. Looking forward to it.
all right. Sounds like a good one. All right. Um, what else was going to say? I was going to say that. So I meant to have to throw in the other obligatory thing. So this is episode 365, and we are brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. One of these days, I'm going to kind of smooth that out, but I just get on here. It's like, whatever. What do I remember? Even if it's written down, I don't remember. I need to script it.
That's right.
See,
Got to remember to read the thing you wrote down.
yeah, this is where you know that we're not following a teleprompter because I'm like, what? Oh yeah, I should say this, right, and all. All right. Well, so June is getting near the end. Next
Yeah.
next time we
This
meet, it'll
entire
be
year is flying by. It's
yeah, it
unbelievable.
really is. It really is, and it just yeah, I mean, we're closing in on July 4th and lots of
Yeah.
big festivities, I think, planned around the country and whatnot. So,
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind
my
of,
thing. So we'll be out west, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And it's like one of them would they're doing something at the Hoover Dam or some kind of thing, and they got this big lit up American flag that covers the whole dam now. So just
wow.
huge, ginormous flag. So and light show, I think it's like a drone light show. So that's one of the ones. It's kind of out of the way of what we were thinking of doing, but it might be worth it. I don't know though. I'm looking for a good, unique something you wouldn't see here 4th of July out there.
Yeah, drone light shows have become all the rage. I mean,
Yeah, I've never seen one. I really want to see just like what they do and what it looks like.
yeah, I mean, I've seen them like on newsreels, they'll,
Yeah,
stuff like that, but not in person. But you kind of look at that and you're like, well, that's kind of cool. I mean, what the technology does, it allows them to do that, and I think people in generally like that. I mean, it brings a whole new dimension to what you can do to entertain people. When it
right.
gets dark and you want to celebrate something. So I think it's pretty cool. All right, so today is National Pralines Day. You're probably familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up down south. They're very bad for the cavities and whatnot.
Yeah.
The dentists love them.
Yeah, it's a little bit high on the sugar content.
They really are. Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah,
you got your Brigham Young shirt on. We need to talk about
that's
the number one
yeah.
pick
I
in the
looked in my
draft.
closet. I'm looking like something. NBA draft, AJ DeBansta, number one pick. I'm gonna
Coming
wear
to
the
the
Y shirt,
Wizards.
huh?
He's coming to the Wizards. He's our
Yeah, coming to the Wizards on top of all that. Yeah.
first
So
number one overall. We've had two before. One was John Wall, which did work out. He
yeah,
was a pretty good player for us for a while. And the other one was Kwame Brown. But they drafted him out of high school, and when he got to the age where he should be playing NBA basketball, he was a decent player. But we didn't have him then. He was long gone from us at that point. We had him when he was not ready for NBA basketball.
yeah. I mean, the NBA they have to understand, like at that particular time, not everybody coming, that's 18 years old or whatever is ready to play in the pros. I mean, LeBron was a man child. I mean, the guy
Right.
was.
There's a very few, and like Barry Switzer said, all his years in football, he saw one player who could go from high school to the pros. One guy. It was Earl Campbell, which I I think most football
Earl
fans
Campbell was a beast.
I could say that. Yeah, I interviewed Earl Campbell one time late in his career. He was playing for the Saints, and they were doing their training camps at Louisiana Tech, and I just went over there and got a story one day, and I sat with him on the tailgate of a pickup truck, and talked to him for about 45 minutes, and it's like that guy. You think about all the hits he's taken. He just sit with the way he deals with it. Is he sat there that 45 minutes. And I bet he did not move 3 inches. He was like, and he talked. He gave good answers. He was on the ball. It wasn't that he avoided or whatever, but he just didn't move. Like if I move, my body hurts. If I sit still, it's all good.
Yeah, I
So
mean, you think about football, hockey to a lesser extent, but where there are hits. I mean, hockey, there's some brawls and stuff like that, and some other stuff like crashing into boards.
yeah,
Baseball, you crash into a wall in the outfield once in a while and
yeah,
things
you
like
get
that.
hit in the head with a pitch every once in a while.
Yeah, you can,
I
yeah.
can
I mean,
smart.
careers have been ended, either getting hit, like the pitcher getting hit by a line drive coming right
Yeah,
at him, or the other way when you get beanballed,
yeah.
as
Dickie
a hitter.
Kahn,
Yeah, I
he
mean,
was great. Tony Canigliaro.
that's exactly where I was going. Never was the same
Right,
after
that's
that.
right.
So and so you have these people who sustain a lifetime worth of injuries. I mean, they'll make most of them will make millions, if not tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
Even some make hundreds of millions of dollars. But they are that's a trade off for the price they pay physically for the
Yeah,
rest of their life. After they're done
that's right.
with their sport, they have to live with that pain.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you watch like anytime you read an NFL player died, look at the age.
yeah,
Like you don't see a lot of 80s and 90s. You see a lot of high 40s, low 50s. A
yeah,
lot because the nutrition you have to do to play at that level too, that takes a toll. You got to eat a lot of calories, right? Your body's processing way more than the average person. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
yeah.
Brett Favre said that playing quarterback in the NFL is like having 40 car wrecks a week. I mean, think about like the beating you would take from 40 car wrecks a week, 6 a day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out of the house. Screw the
Yeah,
car.
are mostly desk job like careers,
Yeah,
much safer in
yes, indeed.
overall.
I've had some people, you write if you write for a living, you'll occasionally have people that want to pop you upside the head or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was driving, and these guys pulled up beside me and pointed guns at me one time, and over something I had written, and that was kind of scary. And I got away from them, and but other than that, like you say, you're sitting at a desk.
Yeah, I made this comment. Where was it? It was on Facebook or something. Anyway, so and I guess I guess it was because it was after they had that dust up between the union person and the Democrat here, during last day of early voting in Montgomery County, and I just said, like, imagine that, kind of liberals, fighting each other, and I just saw somebody respond to that. Just called me a racist, delusional, Trump guy, kind of this, and like whatever, it's like this shows liberals don't like it when they're shown that they are not in
They think
agreement.
we care what they
Yeah,
think of us.
yeah. It's like
Uh,
if you're trying to elicit a response out of me, I've moved on. I
yeah,
made my one little observation and I'm gone.
yeah. This old
So
country song. She thinks I still care.
yeah,
um, yeah, but speaking of that, so like they have a little problem over there on the left, right? They had it. There was a primary elections in New York last night, and Dan Goldman, prominent mainline Democrat congressman, lost by 30 points in his primary. And he's done. His political career is over. And he had, I guess he went to get coffee at somewhere in Manhattan, and they refused to serve him because he did not condemn Israel. Even though he's Jewish, right? He's been a pro-Israel congressman, and so Hermit Dillon, whom right?
right.
She's the assistant attorney general for human rights now. And she is going after the people who denied him service. She's fighting for Dan Goldman, who got bounced by 30 points. I don't know. I get it, but they're trying to make the point that you can't refuse service to these people. And that's all good and fine, and and it's kind of a neat little story and whatnot. But we also are for the guy in Colorado not having to bake the gay wedding cake. right? So if they don't want to sell Dan Goldman coffee because of his Israel policy, how is that different? We need to decide what we are as a country on that. Yeah, I don't really care what we choose. We can say you must wait on everybody that comes in the door, or you're free to choose, right? And you kick people out or not refuse service, whatever. I mean, we got into all this, like Rand Paul, he always talks about the Civil Rights Act, right? He's like, that was, everybody's all happy, we you don't have to count the jelly beans in the jar and all that stuff anymore. But some bad stuff came out of that, right? Is his point, right? And one of them is like, what can we tell a business to do? It seems like a good thing when you're saying, let the black people eat at the lunch counter, but now you're saying, but make the guy bake the cake, right? It's a complicated thing, and it's like, we need to figure out like what we're going to do about that, and sort of arrange everything around it. But whatever you think of that, Democrats have a problem, right? The middle of their party is being destroyed by the far left, right? Their problem was they weren't enough in the middle to win elections before. And so the people who are winning elections now are farther to the left, right? They're farther from the American mainstream than the people who are already losing. So, what does Hakeem Jeffries do, right? How does he support these candidates that, they'll get him beat, right? They'll get him kicked out. So alarming results. And now the Democrats have a civil war on their hands, and it'll be interesting to see, what they do. And I'm beginning to think that, they're not going to win anything in the midterms, and they're going to have, some serious problems.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, what you talk about, with regard to what do you do about, refusing service or whatever, I begin to wonder from a legal standpoint, and when, neither one of us are lawyers, as to whether or not, in the lease agreements.
But I am an amateur lawyer. Just that. Go ahead. I do not go to court on anything that I say.
Yeah. But, as you're talking, it just kind of made me wonder, if you're going to sign a lease, you need a lawyer anyway. But I begin to wonder whether or not there are, landlords or something like that will start putting in clauses about, almost telling them, trying to bury something somewhere and saying like, you must serve everyone. You can't refuse, or something like that. Otherwise, we can yank your lease or whatever, and things like that. I mean, I could see landlords being skittish enough to basically restricting the rights of the business owners. And then what business owner wants to operate under those circumstances where the landlord is saying, dictating what you can and can't do?
Right, but those are all market considerations.
Yeah,
that's what happens. If the private individual who owns that land wants to make that restriction, and the guy wants to A, go along with it, or B, refuse and move, that's the market settling the problem, which rough justice, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, and for the landlord, I mean, some of it is going to be a calculated bet in terms of, if I don't rent the space to this person, is there another person that will fill the space? Because I need the income from that space. I can't have these places sit open. So if you try,
my ideology is costing me too much money, then I may have to temper my ideology or get out of the landlord business or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think there's still a lot. We've been going. I mean, the cake baking thing is, gosh, how long ago is that? That was quite a while ago.
Well, it keeps coming back. Well,
if it's after. Right. I mean, and if it's not that, it's kind of the spawn of the cake baking thing, where others that have done something similar have been caught up in this web of nonsense and all. And so you're right about the Democrats do have this problem overall with with this whole Mandami Democratic Socialists. Okay, so he endorses these guys. He gets several winners out of that. DC, they're going to go further left. LA, there's a threat there. I mean, Karen Bass is no savior to anyone, but it could turn further left. With
I mean, that's a good race to talk about this. Right, it's either an extremist, this Democrat Socialist Association or whatever they are, extremist, or an utterly incompetent, Joe Biden over the hill, incapable boob. Basically, that's all you got, right? And they're both Democrats, and they got to fight it out. But that's basically, Bass represents the establishment, the Democratic establishment. And what's her name? Neeson? I can't remember. It's just two last names or whatever.
Yeah.
But she's not. She's far outside the mainstream.
Yeah, and they, just when I thought, the far left was, the squad was having problems, then comes these things pop up, and it's like it almost has breathing new life into them. Okay, so it's Neetha Raman. So,
right.
Yeah,
so she's not. Yeah, so the squad was a dreadnought, right? Everything they did went up in smoke. All their candidates got hammered. So what have the Democrats done? They've gone and given you more of this. They're like, no. We don't care how bad we lose. This is the direction we're going.
Yeah, I mean, they were dwindling in number. This is going to breathe some new life into them. But the problem is that once they get to elected office, their performance is terrible, and you see their true colors come out a little bit. You see exactly what happens there, and I think the voters will have some buyer's remorse that they fell for this whole scheme of what was being promised. Because we know that Mandami is not going to be able to deliver on everything that he's promised. And that's how he wooed people to his side. I mean, New York is heavily Democratic anyway, but he wins on his charm and these promises, but they're ridiculous. If you're going to have free groceries and all this stuff. Some people have free groceries anyway. My wife was in an Aldi like a week ago, and she was paying for a few things that we needed, and the cashier mutters something to her. She says, "Oh, there goes one," and some guy had just walked right out with a bunch of groceries. And they have zero security, in that particular store. There's no security person on staff. I assume they've got cameras or something like that somewhere that can record the action. But then you're now having to figure out how you're ever going to catch the guy. So,
right. And the thing about it is like my brother worked in a grocery store years ago, and one of the other cashiers was a former cop in the Philippines. So this guy goes running out with some sandwiches or whatever. That guy, he did what cops do. He went running out and caught the guy, got him on the ground, subdued him. And they said, "Hey, we don't do that. We let him go." That's the thing. Like they've decided that the cheapest way to handle this is to let it go. And
I could see. Like I think I've said this before. Sprinkled throughout Montgomery County are these little trailers with a big pole, and at the top there's basically a camera, and there's a little blue light that kind of, I guess it just stays on, and what that is it's basically a security camera the county provides that the police, and they're supposedly monitoring that or whatever, or recording whatever action or whatever, so they can go back, and if something happened, if you get assaulted in the parking lot, or if you ran out and stole something, they can review the tape and see if they can't match it up to something, somehow. Our country does not like
surveillance. No.
Yeah. Our country doesn't really
because like they have one job, right? Government has one job, is to protect our property, not to protect us. 2A is for us to protect us, right? Is to protect our property. Right? When you go to work in the morning and you come back in the evening, there's nobody sleeping in your bed, right? And if there is, government extracts that person on your behalf, right? Then no one can take your business from you. No one can take the money out of your cash register without government showing up and doing something about it, right? That's their job, and they have fallen so far out of doing their job that they're you're talking about flock cameras and whatnot. They've essentially given up. We're just going to take a picture and hope to figure it out, right? Not we're in the street preventing law breaking. That's a whole different posture. They're going to get away with their crime. They're beating you up in the street. You're going to get completely beaten up, right? And then we'll watch the tape and try to do something about it. Now, I don't want that. I want stop the guy from beating me up, or to stop my, destroying my property, my car, my house. Stop it. You are supposed to stop it. That is your job. Quit doing the other things that are not that, right? Drop all that and do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the Asian markets here, the Lotte supermarket that we have. So we've got we've got several in the area, and I if I recall what they've done, I guess with people, maybe they're repeat offenders. I don't know, because I know I've gone into that store where I've seen like a picture, like a piece, posted with kind of a grainy picture of someone who basically shoplifted in the store. Uh, and I think it's more. I don't necessarily think it's like if you see this guy, you report him. I think they're just. I think they're trying to say, if you're this person, you're banned from the store or something like that. But they don't have. It's not like they put the technology into their store that basically picks them up and automatically gets somebody. Because once again, they don't have security on staff. Exactly how do they handle it? If that person comes back for another load of groceries, what are they going to do? Are they really going to accost that person? They're going to be able to call the cops in time to have them do that, and then review all the tape and say, yeah, here on this date you actually stole, $300 worth of groceries or whatever. I'm not sure that what they're doing there, if that's any kind of a deterrence at all. So it's
Right.
it's a hard thing. I mean, this is the other side of owning a store. You have this ever increasing risk of having people who think, I can't afford this, but the store makes plenty of money and they can afford to give me some free food, and I'm just walking out of here because they're never going to touch me. It's which I've just find.
Right. Because what happens, what the end result of that is Aldi closes. Right. They
Right.
can't make money like that. They can't give away a third of the product and make money. It's a very
Yeah.
low margin business to start with.
Right.
So,
I'm a person who in general likes, you know, self checkout, because a lot of times I'll have just a few items. If I got more items, I'll do the regular checkout. But if I've got like 3 items or 2 items, self checkout, especially at a place like Aldi, when they have it, is great because the line otherwise is ridiculous because they employ the bare minimum staff,
right.
and so you can go over there and you'll see a line of 15 before they try to find another employee to try to reduce that line. But self checkout, you're now. And they had followed that wave of self checkout just like a lot of even the bigger stores like Walmart and Target. But when the theft became too large, they pulled them all out. So they went back to regular checkout. The self checkout left, and the next step will be we're going to leave. We
Yeah.
can't. If there's not enough business and you're stealing me blind, and the store is now wholly unprofitable. We're
That's
moving on.
why, by the way, that is why there's a grocery, desert in New York. That's why there's a fresh food desert in New York. That's why this guy's trying to open grocery stores, is because they didn't protect the grocery stores they had, so they went out of business. Right? It takes you have to have some space for a grocery store for
Right, you gotta
as
have
we
a
say,
lot
a
of space.
low margin business. It's a
Yeah.
big store. Even a small grocery store is a pretty big store, and you kind of got to have some kind of parking because people got to put the groceries in something, right? If you're buying $400 worth of groceries, not most people are not going to get on the bus and with their 42 bags and get off the bus with their 42 bags, right? You need cars. You got to have a way to deal with cars. So all those stores closed because they're not getting protected. They're losing too much money because the government didn't do the one thing it's supposed to do.
Yeah, so New York is full of bodegas, which is fine, but the trade-off here is that because you can't have a bigger store, you got a smaller store with higher prices
That's
because they
exactly
don't
right.
they can't
And
buy
far,
get
far
bought.
less selection. Far
Yeah,
less
and a
selection.
very small selection. They have got to stock what sells. They can't afford to have stuff on the shelf that spoils. So it's kind of this never-ending cycle. And this is where the people who stole them blind and other things like that led to these situations. And look, most of those people. I mean, if you're stealing, you're not exactly going to be the most well educated person in the world anyway, or the highest achiever in all likelihood. From a little grocery store. For me, if you're stealing from Aldi, I don't think the profile of Aldi is $250,000 a year driving a Mercedes or or a Maserati or something like that. It's the average Joe, the worker and below minimum wage kind of people, and so you're in essence stealing from them because if they go away, when those stores go into a neighborhood as they have been, particularly with Aldi, they've opened up a whole new avenue of savings and opportunity for people that weren't there before. But I mean, I think DC's had that same problem. Safeway and some of these other stores
They
opened
had
up
the
all sorts of
Walmarts. They had the three
yeah,
Walmarts, and they all
right.
moved out.
And they start closing up because it's like, no, it's like, we can't make money here. We went into this community trying to help you, and instead you
Right,
stole our
especially in the
blind.
case of Walmart. I mean, they were lured in. They didn't want to be there. And
Right.
the government said, "Oh no, come in. We'll make
Oh,
everything good for
yeah,
you."
they weren't just lured in. I think they were pressured to go
Yeah,
in.
yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, I mean, look, for Walmart, all right, I don't know how much money they lost on that. They went ahead and they spent the money. They did it. They closed because they can prove to government officials, your citizens here are, we can't make money. They're stealing, and we're losing all the money that we were making because of theft. It's a low margin business, so we're leaving. We don't serve an altruistic basis. Like, we are here to make money, or if the store had broken even, they
Right.
probably would have been
They
satisfied with
don't
that.
let
But
it ride. That's right.
yeah, because they're such a behemoth. But if they're piling up millions of dollars of losses a year, you got to pull the plug. I
That's
mean,
right.
that's it. I mean, you got to be a good business people, and so let the citizens understand. It's like, this is what happens when your
Yeah.
fellow
You
citizens
keep
steal.
you keep electing these people and putting up with this crap. This is what you get. Right. You
Exactly,
can change this, but you got to change it.
exactly. All right, back to the other news. Well, since you were on the elections, let's go ahead and just finish off on that. So we had New York, we had all these socialists, and so we'll see what, and likelihood, I guess, that they'll probably wind up in Congress, and everything like that. I was watching Utah a little bit only because I guess because you may have seen that Facebook post, and we had an event the other night with Congressman Blake Moore, and it was based on why he believes in his faith, right? So that he wasn't supposed to get political, and he didn't. But he did allude to kind of the pressures of the whole primary season, and so there we were on a Sunday, just a couple of days away from the primary. He wasn't, I think he felt confident he could win, but Utah has become kind of a dogfight, and particularly after they redistricted, after the court said, this map, we don't like this map, you got to do something, which is the chances are they're going to bring back a Democrat. Utah been able to eliminate the Democrats, from the House of Representatives, and looks like Ben McAdams is going to make his way back based on how the court said they had to do things. So
Yeah,
this
they
guy Blake
created
Moore,
so that it's like a D plus 17 district or something.
yeah, I think they said
It's
Kamala won that. What based on the way that's configured, I think Kamala won that by 24.
yeah,
So, it, and so it's going to be pretty hard, not impossible, but pretty hard. And they set this up, and you're like, Utah of all places. So
yeah. But
Utah
if you
is
you
one.
cut it up right, it's just part of Salt Lake City. That's
Yeah,
the whole district.
yeah, and,
Uh,
and I mean, they've had McAdams was in Congress before,
yeah,
they kind of got him out by redistricting, and so now it's coming back. But it's not even the Democrats. So I mean, the Republicans control stuff, right? And then the court came in and said no. After the redistricting commission said this is what we want to do. But I don't know.
they're
In a
weird, but
similar,
they're weird Republicans. It's not,
yeah,
it's a little
well, yeah, they
weirder.
can
It's
be.
not the same as it is everywhere. They
Yeah,
have
I
the,
mean,
Sutherland Commission, and they let in all the, they hey, send all those illegal immigrants to us. No other conservative state is saying that. The not Mike Lee, but the other senator is pretty liberal too.
yeah. So they just.
Republican, but he's not a reliable vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you're like, what goes on there? Because I mean, California has a redistricting commission, right? And then Gavin Newsom was able to shove this referendum so they can redistrict, right? To get on the ballot. And so, like, look, California, which is supposed to be okay, we'll try to be fair about this, but the Democrat governor didn't like the redistricting commission, so he suspended them in essence, so that he can get his way and try to pack, what they've got, for November. And why is that? Why should that be allowed any more so than what happened in Utah? Utah, elections have consequences, but then the court comes in there and mucks it all up and says, this is why I'm not sad to see the Voting Rights Act being dismantled. And as I said before, and we've talked about it before, and I think we're in general agreement, is like, we need fair districts, but I mean, I would just prefer them being drawn contiguous, blind, colorblind. Do not.
I think it's like, so contiguous is harder. I mean, the shape and whatnot is harder than people think.
Right. It doesn't work all the time.
Not everything is as populist as everything else, right?
Right.
So you have to draw shapes that include 740,000 people or whatever it is now. Isn't that right? 700,000.
I don't know what the number is up to now.
Yeah. So, but that's what you got to do. And but I do think that, like, we're to the point where AI could probably do that. Could probably draw fair districts for everybody. Now, people are not going to want that. Maryland certainly does not want that, because a fair districting, they probably lose 2 or 3 seats, right? Western Maryland would have a Republican congressman for sure, and perhaps like the center, like Carroll County, that part of the world, you might be able to elect a Republican. So it's not just, and obviously the Eastern Shore is pretty conservative. So I mean, they keep having these lobster districts and all this stuff trying to wipe out the Eastern Shore, and which you kind of can't do because it's just too Republican. So but I think you're to the point where you could say, if you could get all the states to go in on it, where you could say we're all going to draw our maps, we use this program of AI, and it's just going to like put 764,000 or whatever it is, 46,000 people in an area. And like you work out who wins these seats, right? No political considerations whatsoever. But like you learn in school, gerrymandering is one of the spoils of victory. So don't expect it to go away soon, right? Is the way. I mean, the way the situation, the thing is set up now, there's nothing wrong with gerrymandering. People like it puts a bad taste in people's mouth, but it's completely legal and doable and a prerogative of the majority. So if you want to undo what's going on in Maryland or Texas or California, go there and win elections.
Yeah. You reminded me too. I forgot I wanted to check my Maryland results, because I have this guy that we've been talking to on our other show, that a friend of mine, he was running in the primary for Republican, send a Marine to Congress, and he lost by about 2,000 votes to Robin Ficker. And I'm like, Robin Ficker is that perennial candidate, but he's a nice guy, but I think he's just unelectable.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to elect Robin.
I'm sorry. I feel bad because, like, if this former Marine, or I guess, but if you never are a former Marine, I guess you're always a Marine. If this guy had won, he's a smart young guy. He's got a good story. He spent 22 years. He was JAG. He married a woman from, I think it was Ghana. They've got 4 beautiful children. Robin Ficker is he's so kind of quirky and odd.
He's a brand. He's a thing.
Yeah, he is. So he's going to have to face April Delaney.
She beat Trone.
Yep, she beat Trone. So it shows that all that Trone money didn't make a dent. So I just looked at it, was like 42-37 or something, or 40. What was it? Something like that. And so anyway, or 42-33. Anyway, so yeah, so Trone lost his shot there. So Delaney, I think Delaney's vulnerable, but I think she would have been more vulnerable against this guy Chris Burnett than against Robin Ficker. And then we have Dan Cox,
6, right? Maryland 6,
right? And then we have Dan Cox in a rematch against Wes Moore, and I'm like, that's gone.
Again, Here's the thing about it. I would, if I were Dan Cox, like, I don't know he needs any advice from me, but I would make it all about Westmore. I wouldn't talk about anything that you plan to do. I would have a commercial showing that bridge not touched. Right, we're still sitting here 4 years after that bridge got hit. Westmore's been governed the whole time. Nothing has happened to get us a new bridge. Right, all you've proven is that you still don't know how to deal with contractors. Right, you're still as bad at it as you were in 2012, 14 when Tony Brown screwed up the Obamacare website. Right, it's the same clowns doing the same stuff. That's what I would do. I would not talk, I would keep talk about what I want to do to a minimum, because you're not going to be able to do much anyway. Just show all his buffoon statements and all that stuff.
No, I mean, his best chance is to take a page from the Larry Hogan playbook and talk about, avoid the issues like, gun ownership, gun control, abortion.
Nothing but Westmore's competence. That's all we're talking about. You got no bridge. See the bridge, no bridge. Right, over and over and over.
Yeah, now Hogan, that was an open seat, when Hogan ran. But what he did was he reminded the voters, about 43 different taxes that had been enacted under the O'Malley regime. Is that what you want? And that's the other thing. Besides the bridge debacle, he can go and talk to, say Westmore and the Democrats. Look what they have done over the last 4 years is that, you're paying double or triple or whatever it is in the car registration fees. We've lost the homestead tax credit because of liberal politicians in Montgomery County and in the state. Their assessments go up, tax rate either stays the same or goes up. Everybody's paying more money. Everybody's getting squeezed. You talk about affordability, and then you're just wiping all the affordability off the map. You're not doing anything to do that. I mean, they could have done something like it would have had a minimal effect, but it would have been symbolic. I don't think they had it. They could have easily have gone in and suspended the gas tax increase that takes effect on July 1. It's not going to be huge, but it is psychologically the last thing anybody needs is to pay a few cents more for gas because it was mandated by the Democrats years ago and has just pushed the price of gasoline in Maryland, to some of the highest in terms of gas taxes in the country. It's like, it's one thing if you're in the middle of the pack or at the lower side, but as you start creeping up towards California levels, you're going in the wrong direction.
Right. And it's proven, like in Maryland, the mass transit versus the non-mass transit wins. They have the votes. It's like it doesn't, like they spent all that money with $50 billion on mass transit and they reduced car trips by less than 1%. It's like people just, if you got to drive, you got to drive. You can't, there's nothing you can do about it. Right. So, that's one thing is, I would talk about taxes. I would talk about, the schools, when Westmore started, they were some of the highest rated in the nation. They're sunk to the middle of the pack. I would just say over and over and over, this guy, where's my bridge? What's wrong with the schools? Where is all the tax money going? What are you doing for us with all this extra money? Show us something that we say, yeah, I'm glad my money bought that. Right? Because that's really the Maryland thing. The ethos is, yeah, we throw a lot of money into the big pot, but we have all this stuff. We have all these services, pretty good highways, blah, blah, blah. Right. But you really don't anymore. And you don't have a bridge. You don't have a key bridge. Right. And you've done nothing to address it. I would just talk about nothing but that.
And they're going to have this purple line that Hogan was all for. But Democrats love mass transit. So, there was no way that Moore wasn't going to push this forward, trying to get this thing complete. But, the end result is more likely to be that they'll have spent all this money, all of our money, on building out this whole purple line, light rail thing, and that the ridership will be next to nothing. It'll lose a ton of money on top of the money already expended to build it out. Whereas they could have just cut and run. It would actually almost been wiser just pull the plug, and sell off the land and try to undo what you did, because it's not going it's going to be it's a terrible idea.
Right.
Particularly at a time, after the pandemic, mass transit is a very different animal. I
Yeah.
mean, metro ridership just a shadow of what it used to be. They
Right.
never.
And who's on it, right? It's not really commuters as much anymore, but druggies and, people you don't want to sit next to.
Yeah, I mean, if you get in there and you could theoretically, just like light rail, you could ride a back and forth. I mean, there are light rail police, but you rarely see them. And now you're asking the Maryland Transportation Authority, whatever, you're gonna have to fund more policemen to try to go ahead and
Clean
police.
this up where we can use it. Yeah, no, don't
Yeah,
do that.
well, yeah. There's just a whole lot of things that are going on there. That's just kind of bad news all the way around. Trump got good news out of South Carolina, I guess, because I don't think Trump was going to lose either way, because he seemed to be fine with either the lieutenant governor or this other guy, winning the gubernatorial primary. I mean, I think whoever won the primary was going to win the general election anyway.
Yeah.
So, but
And he
yeah,
got rid of Nancy Mace. Not a bad
yeah,
move.
yeah. I really tell me something though. In what universe did Nancy Mace think she had a shot?
Right. I mean, she has a lot of name recognition.
She
I can
does
see
have
why
high
she
name
it's not.
recognition, but
But
eh,
she was a distant fourth. I mean, she got
yeah,
cracked.
she got creamed in that initial round, and I thought I heard that the lieutenant governor. I mean, she got stomped in
Yeah.
the last night too. So, uh,
Another
well,
big Trump electoral victory in Colombia.
right,
Right. So so now as there's like 8 countries since Doge got in and cleaned up USAID and we shut down USAID. There's been 8 elections in Latin America, and the Trump aligned candidate has won them all. So now it's basically, other than Brazil, it's like Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Bolivia, Colombia. That's all 3 of the Coke nations, right? All the Coke in the world comes from Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. So if you got ends with all of those, you can really make some hay against drug trafficking, right? Which they've already done, shooting the boats and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a big, from a practical standpoint, and also from, if you're in our hemisphere, you need to understand that Trump, like you said at that G7 meeting or whatever, he is the boss, right? He's the boss of all those guys, and already El Salvador was in place, so if you're against him, if your thing is like to be Claudia Scheinbein and be, reflexively anti-Trump, you're increasingly find yourself on an island.
yeah. So this guy Abelardo de la Espriella, so he's won. It's a very narrow victory. I think the last vote count I saw was about maybe 250,000 votes separated him from the leftist. But what I enjoy this part, not because necessarily because the guy was backed by Trump, but the left is complaining about voting irregularities.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what?
I mean, they're trying, they're thinking that that's a play out of our playbook, right? Let's just try what they did. Well, it's different because we're not just doing it to cause trouble. Like, you are cheating in the elections, right? We took away the cheat money, and all of a sudden, your guys don't win anymore.
Yeah. So I just find I'm very bemused by the fact that they're going on this thing and they're taking this page from the conservatives thing, like, oh, our guy really won because it's voting irregularities, and that's why their guy won right now. But there's a lot of things going on. It's like, okay, this is just way too funny. This is good fodder, for someone here, to take care of and all this stuff. I just it's going to be funny. So yeah, a narrow victory like that, I mean, that obviously is not a mandate, really, but it does change the dynamic in Colombia. You're going to have to make sure that he's safe and secure, and you know, that part of the world. I mean,
Not over till those guys say it's over.
yeah, and you better have just a lot of protection, and your detail. Make sure nobody's trying to somehow surreptitiously plant an IED
Very,
in your
very
car.
careful who you hire.
Yeah,
Very,
absolutely.
very careful who you hire.
Yeah. So, he's just so we'll see, but it's an interesting thing to have happen there that yet another Latin American country has turned towards the Trump sphere, I guess, in the sense. On the other hand, I guess Great Britain is going to go further left. They're looking like the Democrat. So Keir Starmer's been in for what, 2 years? They're going to be on their seventh prime minister in the last decade or so. And so Keir Starmer's resigned. He saw the handwriting on the wall that he probably was not going to survive very much longer. So since the Liberal Party is in control, they get to select the next prime minister, and it's most likely to be this guy Andy Burnham, who is just. I think I heard I think it was on Bloomberg or something like that. They said, he's further left than Cuba. So it's like well, that's pretty bad. And
I think it's like H.L. Mencken said, people deserve the government they get with the government.
Yeah,
they elect gives them good and hard. That's what's about to happen here. The same, they like go further left, go get it out of your system. Let people see, like, because right now the political mood in the UK is you got to get these immigrants out of here. Right, they're taking over. There's this, the real reason Keir Starmer has to resign, and you don't hear much about this in American media, is a report came out saying there were 250,000 white women raped by Pakistani men that they let in with these open border immigration policies, and Keir Starmer himself let off several thousand of them with warning letters. He didn't even try to prosecute them for rape and forcible sodomy, and they, in many cases, they gave the girls, they go to the NHS, right, National Health Service, to get examined, and they would give the girl back to the guy who raped her. So it just completely debacle. That is why this pressure is on him to resign. It's not, people say, oh, the economy's going bad and all this kind of stuff. No, he's in trouble for this. And it's kind of an earthquake in the UK right now. And they got to do something, electing a guy who cares even less about it. I mean, they can do that, but it's not going to, at some point you're going to have an election, you're going to have a vote of no confidence, you're going to have an election, and they're going to lose badly. They the Reform Party, if they had an election today, would win easily. And I think everybody knows that. I think we're there. It won't be long till the leaders there decide that we do need to have that election. Also, I'd like to point out there are a lot of people in our country who do not like the two-party system, right? They do not like they think you can do better. We should be more parliamentary in how we deliberate. This shows you why the parliament system sucks, right? This is, like you say, 7 leaders in 10 years. You have no agenda. You have no executive. You have only a legislative branch that's to a point of dysfunction that it can't do anything to solve the big problems of the day.
Yeah, I want to make this clear too, that what's happened here is that with Starmer is that the big scandal around Starmer occurred before he was prime minister, and when he was head of this Child Protective Services, and there were these grooming gangs, and he basically did nothing. And had turned back
warning letters.
He turned back any inquiries. Only last year did he agree to have an inquiry, set up and all that. So, he, a dozen years or so after, 12 plus years after all this stuff occurred, he finally kind of said, well, maybe we ought to look into it. And so that potentially was going to just blow up in his face anyway. On top of that, but I don't want anybody to think that things happened under Starmer's watch necessarily as the prime minister. A lot of the stuff that he's been accused of goes back to 2008, 2013, but he was complicit in not doing anything. He turned a blind eye, in essence, to these grooming gangs. So, but the other thing is that with the UK, they have problems, right? I mean, the Tories didn't really do anything. The economy wasn't going well. A lot of things weren't going well, and so that's why they got swept up in this, historic election where they just got wiped out. Starmer theoretically had a mandate there at this point in time, but nothing's happened. There's been no progress really. People feel as worse, if not worse off than they were before. Everything costs more money. So Starmer and Starmer is just not a very good communicator. He's very stiff. He's very, I don't know. Something is he's not the kind of guy.
Connect. Yeah, he's kind of weird for a politician.
He's not, and Andy Burnham is going to be very different. He's going to have that. He's probably going to have some charm and some things like that, which will probably woo and win some voters over. And they'll have to have another election in the next few years anyway. So, he'll be in there for a few years, and then they'll have to call another election, and we'll see whether or not his policies do anything. Now, it's also like the 10th anniversary of Brexit. I don't know. I mean, I think the jury's still. I mean, I'm glad that the UK. I'm glad that they're not in there. I think, by and large, they're probably happy that they're not in it. As part of the EU overall, but they didn't necessarily get quite all the economic benefits that they thought they were going to get out of that. But I think they're trying to resist calls of rejoining the EU. I don't think they should ever. I don't think there's
momentum for that, and the EU is not exactly covering itself with glory either. So they're not looking like an organization that you really, really, really want to rejoin.
Right. Couple other things here as we get close to the end. So just really quickly on the Iran war. So now reports are coming out about the amount of money that we spent. So the Defense Department has got kind of a low minimum amount there. Plus, they're going to request like 29 billion, and they're requesting 80 billion more for some other things. And then there's some other costs that are going along with it. I still, I talked briefly last week when I saw the initial, MOU. I didn't like it then. I don't like it today. But my bottom line right now is just like, can we just, we need to kind of end this thing. If we do get nuclear inspectors into Iran and things like that, well, that'll be a step in the right direction. But the IEA or whatever, they said they know nothing about being requested to go in there yet. I know Trump wants to. I think he wants to get this behind him one way or the other.
No, I don't. I think what he wants to do is for them to violate what they say they're going to do and give him a pretext to finish the job. Israel.
And I don't mind if he wants to finish the job. I mean, that's fine with me.
That's what I want. And I think in all these things, he doesn't care. Oh, Trump's diplomatic effort is failing. He's not trying to have a diplomatic effort. He's trying to make them do something that gives him a pretext to finish the job. And, I think he's right on schedule to do it. That's a pittance compared to the money you're talking about, is a pittance compared to what we have spent defending against the terrorism these people visited on the world for 47 years. So, finish the job, mop the floor, find the other Ayatollah and send him to his 72 virgins.
Yeah. And I'm fine with finishing the job, but I also think there's, because
that's the other thing about this war. There was a law, right, at one point in the U.S. You cannot assassinate people we were at war with, right? And so Trump has proven that was a very bad way to go about this. That in fact, it's a very good way to get regime change if you decapitate. The other thing is supposedly they're getting close in Fort Pierce, Florida, that grand jury. Where one of the things that's being talked about that's leaking out of there is that they are probably going to indict Barack Obama for his role in Russiagate. So they have and in fixed elections, and they have the treasurer of Venezuela telling them exactly who paid what to fix the vote totals. So if all that's true and can pan out, I mean, that'll be some earth-shaking stuff. But if it doesn't happen pretty soon, it's like the Durham report and the Horowitz report and all the other stuff that was going to save the conservative movement. If it doesn't happen pretty soon, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to matter.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we need to have a clear resolution on just where we're going with the war. Either finish the job or do something, because there's that overhang that happens that will, for the midterms, really in the sense of it's keeping costs elevated, and so people, there are going to be people who vote with their pocketbook that will not vote Republican in the midterms if they don't feel that they are better off and that this war has actually been costing.
One thing is
them money.
about that, talking about the cost. So the Treasury Secretary said, if the price for a barrel of oil goes down, I want to see the gas prices go down. Now the libertarians are all, oh, so you're interfering with trade. No. You're that's the bully pulpit of the government is a legitimate instrument in price setting, right? If they go make a regulation, you can only sell gas for so much a gallon. That's probably a bad policy, right? But saying, hey, you better be fair to the American people about this is not. That's jawboning on our behalf, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that the people involved should take heed that, if you don't, do the right thing, lower the price, get it things, because once that, you can already see, like I bought gas for $3.40 something last night. So you can already see that it's coming down. It's almost down $1 already. And you'll soon be back in the twos, right? You're selling 70. What is it? What is oil this morning? 72, 73 a barrel, something like that.
It's somewhere in the 70s now. So I think you'll see that. And,
yeah. So, and these happen quick because he's going to be on them quick. They got about a week or so. They need to start making adjustments.
Yeah. Oil's a complicated process. I mean, you have costs. You still have to take the barrel. You got to refine it. You have a supply.
Yeah, but all that, the input is the thing that changes the price.
Yeah.
It's not the refining.
And they worry about, it's like, as long as we think we've got, adequate supply, we can probably go ahead and do that. But if things remain tight, then they're not going to lower the price quite as fast. But it's coming down, so it is a good sign overall. Quickly, the other thing too here is just that the reflecting pool is proved to be a little bit tougher to deal with than I think the administration anticipated. I read an article in the New York Times, and I think they did a relatively fair job, because they weren't really, I don't think they really were criticizing. Obama had spent a lot of money, and Trump's spending a lot of money on this, but nobody's addressed like the infrastructure of the pool itself, and the pipes. They're still leaking, this thing requires more of an overhaul than just going into the pool and ripping out, whatever was in there and just saying, we're going to put in this leak-proof surface or whatever. There's other issues. And it's a weird kind of a reference pool because of how their water source is drawn and all of these things.
Someone made them get the water out of the river for some reason.
Yeah, it comes out of the tidal basin right now instead of the drinking supply, and the tidal basin can have algae and can feed that in.
Part of it. Part of it is there's algae on the pipes, that they're still going in. You've got hot weather with this pool thing. It's like perfect conditions for algae. So this is trickier than I think. I love the idea of having a blue pool, but they need, this is going to require a lot more effort and money to really fix it long term. But if there's somebody who can do it, Trump's going to go in there and say, fix this the right way. No one was trying before. No one even tried. But Obama threw twice as much money as Trump has at it and got nothing. So somebody needs to try it.
Maybe after July 4th, after they kind of get past all the celebratory thing, they can go in there and they can actually rip up the pipes and replace them or something like that, and figure out a better way to do this. It's an old system. We have you know, across America, I mean, there are water pipes buried that deliver
That
water
one
to
had
all,
like that
and
place
they
thing was
they burst
disgusting
and they
too.
break, and they, you know, after when they get old, things happen.
Yeah,
You know, so it's not your home that has a problem. It's usually the pipe outside that's got a problem, the
that's
main
right.
line and whatnot. Um, all right, and
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Tomorrow, I guess they're expecting a bunch of decisions. We're winding up here because by the 30th, I think
It's
that's
supposed
they're
to be
going to
done
be
for this term.
they'll be done and they'll have issued out the all the major decisions. So they're trickling out now. Tomorrow should be a big day. We'll talk about more about those next week when they happen. So everybody is this will be a real time for Supreme Court watch at this point in time.
Birthright citizenship, men and women's sports,
Right.
the Watson, which has to do with how late the envelopes can come for elections, so forth, trying to clean up the elections a little bit. So yeah, a lot of there's some big cases.
All right, so I have to throw this up here. This wonderful presidential library, and so they opened that thing up, and it's a unique presidential library for Obama because there are no presidential papers.
Right.
It's got a
there. It's just
basketball
walk
court.
around and look at his stuff.
Yeah.
Why does all the art associated with Obama so ugly? Like his presidential portrait is horrible. Hers is even worse. Right. And then they designed this building and it looks like a grain elevator hit by a storm. Right. Which is a grain elevator. That's appropriate for Illinois. Right. It's a big grain state. But that thing's horrible. Imagine that's one good thing is like if you're on our side, you don't have to pretend it's pretty.
Yeah,
right?
I don't even know how do you, I don't even know how. I mean, grain elevator probably is better. I mean, that thing is just a monstrosity. I don't understand.
You should see it at night. It's like, yeah, I bet night is the best way to see it. Anyway.
All right. Also, so my daughter-in-law is visiting. She's in England on a study abroad, and so she had to make a trip to Aberdeen, Scotland, where my forebears are from. So she went to a thing called Drum Castle. So I don't do any of this family history stuff when it comes to the Scot. And she and Spencer wanted to do a lot of this when he was around, and so she's taken up the mantle of doing this. And so she went to this castle, and so they have this. So the Irvines, or the Irvins, as they would pronounce it in Scotland, they turned the castle over to the National Scottish Trust for Historic Preservation, like in 1975, probably because it costs a ton of money to maintain a castle.
That's how the government gets a lot of property.
Yeah, it's like these things cost too much money. Please take it off your hands.
That's how Trump got Mar-a-Lago, right? It was owned by Meriwether Post. And she got where she couldn't take care of it, and she donated it to the state of Florida. State of Florida couldn't take care of it, so Trump bought it from them.
Yeah. So my daughter-in-law was. She said actually the highlight of that whole thing too, though, is that because she carries the last name Irvine, the guide took her to a special room where there is a register book that only Irvines can sign.
How about that?
So she added her name. So now it's like, oh, I wish you guys were here. I'm like, great. Now you
got to go over there.
Now I got to go so I can put my name to this book. There
you go.
At the very least.
So, we better go to South Carolina before they kick us out of here.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, and then last but not least, rest in peace to Alan Greenspan, 100 years old, remarkable life. I mean, he took some hits for the economic crisis, but he ran the Fed for about 18, 19 years, which was a remarkable run. And I think
survived the infighting of Washington.
Yeah, that's a tough job.
Anybody ever.
Yeah, that's a tough job, and as Jerome Powell has seen under President Trump.
Yep, that's right.
So anyway, all right, we're going to let you hit the road, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week, or I should say next month.
Yeah,
bye-bye.